Grass Valley, so I bring you greetings from Occupy Nevada County. We actually made it to the Rachel Maddow show one time because of our foreclosure action, so we're doing some good work like what all of you are doing. We started out our corporate personhood working group as just a small working group of Occupy. We've now morphed into a large coalition that's including Grandmothers for Peace, the Peace Center, Healthcare for All, California, Nevada County, different social justice groups in various churches. So we have quite a big group coming together now around this issue, which is a really key issue related to all of the concerns of Occupy. Everything that has been talked about here can all be linked back to the power of money, the power of corporations. Tonight I'm going to be talking about corporate personhood, what it is, why it distorts and how it distorts our democracy, and why we need a constitutional amendment that would abolish corporate personhood. So, first of all, what is corporate personhood? I know you probably all have an idea about what that is, but it is the legal doctrine that a corporation is a person. We all know that a corporation is not really a person, but it is a legal fiction. It's the idea that a corporation should have the same constitutional rights and protections as do individual human beings. Now, what is a corporation? A corporation, bottom line, is a corporation is a creation of the state. Groups can be incorporated, non-profit groups, not-for-profit groups, for-profit groups. I'm going to be talking mostly about for-profit groups, for-profit corporations, which are incorporated for one purpose at this point, to maximize the wealth of its shareholders. And that is its fiduciary responsibility under the law. Henry Ford was told that he couldn't expand and put a lot of money back into his company and try and raise the standards of people around the United States. No, because Ford Motor Company was not a charity. It is not a charity. It's the fiduciary responsibility of a corporation is to maximize profits, maximize wealth for its shareholders. So, what are the effects of this doctrine that a corporation is a person? It sounds so abstract. It is. It's an abstraction, definitely. But it has very concrete ramifications in our democracy. And rather than go on and on in abstract ways, I'm going to get to the concrete and cut to the chase really quickly. Kraft, macaroni, and cheese. What could be more basic and more concrete?
Yeah. Just like
I'm going to go back to the year 2000, before the Citizens United Supreme Court decision that allows unlimited corporate funds into our elections. Back in 2000, I was at the Democratic National Convention on Santa Monica Pier with my friends demonstrating against corporate money in politics. There were delegates. It was on Santa Monica Pier. There was a big gala going on at the amusement park there. And we were demonstrating, and as people were coming out, the delegates to the Democratic National Convention were bringing out boxes of Kraft macaroni and cheese. Yes. They had, it said, Democrats 2000 emblazoned on the front. And it had donkey-shaped macaroni. Yes, it did. So we were kind of dancing back and forth with the delegates. One of them gave my friend Maggie a box of the Kraft macaroni and cheese. I tell this story in my book, by the way, which is there in the back. And I read the small print, and it said, "Ask not what Kraft macaroni and cheese can do for you. Ask what you can do for Kraft macaroni and cheese." This is true. True story. I heard from a friend who was at the Republican National Convention that they had elephant-shaped macaroni that said Republicans 2000. That's how it works. You have corporations donating to both political candidates so that they can have access to the halls of power and help shape policy in their favor, no matter who is elected. That's what's happening. When we say that corporations, which the situation is now, are given the same rights and privileges, constitutional rights and privileges, civil rights, as are human beings, that doesn't mean that we end up having a level playing field. Because corporations are not people. Corporations have attributes other than the attributes of human beings. They have far more wealth. How many of us could host a gala at an amusement park for the Democratic delegates? No, not many of us. Or hire many, many lawyers to promote our interests, or lobbyists. There are so many things that money can buy that human beings, individual human beings, at least the 99.999% of us can't afford. Can't really compete. As far as time and space, we are here embodied in a particular space. But corporations can span the globe. Corporations can live simultaneously, or simultaneously exist in several places at once, and take advantage of wherever the wages are cheapest, the environmental standards are lowest, and situations are most miserable. They can. Corporations, if they break the law, don't go to jail like we might. They take a fine as the cost of doing business. And corporations have no natural limits to their lifespan. They have what they call the capacity of succession, so they can go on and on and on. So anything that we are engaged in, especially when it comes to public policy, the corporations have an advantage if they're treated like human beings. I read just a little bit of your paper today, of your newspaper, or a newspaper from here, Sonoma West Times and News. It was about the development that was going to include CBS and Chase. Well, I got a little clue at the very end. I read the whole article. The very last word is the clue. The very last sentence. Many of you know more about it than I do. With the findings, the developer can reapply and begin the process again. They have the capacity of succession, and they have money, and they have lawyers, and they can go on and on. Can begin the process again unless it decides to walk away from the project or sue the city. Most of you, I would think that the people who should make that kind of decision, whatever the decision might be, should be the people. Why should a global corporation come in and influence this decision and threaten to sue the city and have precious funds from the city to have to defend the decision of the people? The bottom line is corporations should not be treated as human beings. They are not people. They are creations of the state. They should be given benefits and privileges by us. The people are sovereign in a democracy. That doesn't mean we can't give them benefits and privileges, but it should be for the common good, and it is up to us. I've heard it said that an amendment to the Constitution is the only way that can happen. And an amendment needs to not just overturn Citizens United, it needs to also make it very clear that money is not speech and corporations are not persons. I've heard it said that if it doesn't breathe, it doesn't deserve free speech. And I say, if it doesn't have a conscience and the only conscience it has is the bottom line, it doesn't deserve to determine public policy.
Yes.
And it doesn't deserve to determine the future for my and your children and grandchildren and life on earth. Because democracy is not for corporations, democracy is for people.
Thank you. We really covered it beautifully, and I just want to come at it from a little bit different perspective, a little bit different. You covered certainly the money in politics completely. I'd like to start by observing that the metaphor of sickness and health has arisen several times tonight. Various speakers have said something about this is really sick and talking about coming to health. And you know, in a lot of systems, health is looked at as balance, being in balance, things being a balanced diet, inner balance is a key to health. And I would say that our society is completely unbalanced at this time. The way I would describe it is that the economy, the economic forces, the economic sector completely dominates the political life, which is mostly what you were talking about in terms of money, politics, and also the cultural life, by determining all the values. And I would say the soundtrack of our lives is determined by corporations, okay? I often talk about, when I start this longer talk, about an experience I had when my wife and I owned a infant wear company. We go to trade shows. And at these trade shows, there are companies who want to sell to us. Okay, they're vending to us, and many of them are licensing companies. If you're familiar with the licensing industry, that's where you get to pay Disney a certain amount of percentage of what your sales are so that you can put Mickey Mouse on your bedding. Okay, or, you know, that kind of thing. And so I was walking through the lobby of this trade show, and a man from one of these companies, you know, called me over and said, "Are you going to buy our license for your, you know, for your products next year?" He didn't know what products were, but it didn't matter. "Are you going to buy our license next year?" And I said, "I don't think so." And he said, "Well, you've got to, because we're going to own the minds of the 3 to 5-year-old segment next year." Corporations have no shame and no conscience, and they want to, and they are determined to control the inner lives of human beings. And that's the reality of it. No matter, you know, they want to dominate us by setting the whole framework of how we look at issues and how we think and the choices that we make. And you know, when I was, I'm totally in support of what's happened, of the actions with public education. And I was talking to the people who were here who had a lead. And we were talking about the fact that it's not just they've taken all the money away, but if you listen to discussions of public policy around education, it's all about creating the workers of the future. That's what education is about. It's not about creating free human beings. It's not about helping us to become freer, better, happier people. It's about who's going to fill the job slots for the corporations. But that's the other side. We're going to be happy consumers, which is, of course, has become our principal civic identity. I mean, we're not even citizens anymore. We're starting to become citizens again. But really, most people thought about consumer rights, not citizen responsibility. So that's the way they frame this, right? They frame the whole culture. So it's not, and that's why, of course, the way they've done that, one of the principal vehicles they've used to do that is the right of free speech. The right of corporate free speech has allowed them to speak to all of us and any of us as loudly as they want. Everybody knows that the commercials on television are louder than the programs, right? You all know that. They finally, in fact, started to pass a law about that. But
good.
for the last 40 years, God, doesn't that sound loud when the commercial comes on? Yeah, they can talk to us as loud as they want, as often as they want, anytime they want, and to anybody they want, including our babies. Baby Einstein. Can you believe that? Baby Einstein. And the campaign for a commercial-free childhood took Disney on about Baby Einstein, and they beat him. They made him take it down, and Disney turned around this campaign for commercial-free childhood. So one group out of Boston that fights all the corporations about the way they go after kids. So they beat him on this, and Disney somehow got to the people who gave them free rent and got them kicked out of their quarters. That's how much they respect other people's free speech rights. But the point is that this right of corporate constitutional rights is the principal vehicle by which corporations dominate our entire culture. So if you see a constitutional amendment that just deals with money is not speech, forget it. That's such a trickle down. We need to end corporate constitutional rights if we're going to get control of our own destiny back. Okay? And Amy's going to talk about what we're doing right now, moving in that direction. Thanks a lot. Oh, one more thing. I decided to eschew, I talked about this in a larger context. I decided just to forget about modesty and just have a teach-in, which we do, and call it Father Abraham Explains It All. Yes. We're going to start at the dawn of history and get to now and talk about how we went from supplicant to subject to sucker with social history. Okay? It's free. It's March 8th at 5 o'clock at the Arlene Francis Center, and there's some flyers about it over there. So I hope you all come down and we'll have a really good time talking about this stuff. So thank you very much.
Okay, so I think I heard when we were being introduced that there were going to be 3 experts, and I just want to say that I'm not an expert, and that's why I'm talking to you, because you have to get motivated to talk to people and take action on this without being an expert, because it's going to take everybody. I might be an expert in some things, but it's not perfect personhood yet. So the first thing is to talk to people, and if you haven't gone to the Move to Amend website, movetoamend.org, it's an amazing resource. They're actually doing a major overhaul, and it'll be even better soon, but it's right now has so much information on it. And it's such a multi-dimensional issue that one thing that you can do is find the thing about it that resonates most with you and connect that to your community groups that you already belong to and take it to those community groups. So if you're a parent, take it to your mother's club or your mama's book club or whatever you're connected to. If you're involved in healthcare, bring it there. If you, if you care about workers' rights, if that's kind of your top priority, then investigate how corporations have been not allowed, health inspectors have not been allowed to come into workplaces to investigate health and safety regulations because corporations say that that is a violation of their constitutional rights. So there are just amazing underhanded ways that corporations have used the Bill of Rights. And when we talk about corporate personhood, it's really corporate constitutional rights. That was a really important shift for me in how to talk to other people about the issue. That we're not taking away, like Sharon said, legal privileges that the people can give to corporations. What we're doing is saying that they're not entitled to constitutional rights that were put in place to protect people. For example, the 14th Amendment was used, what's that statistic, like within the first 15 years after it was passed, it was used something like 30 times more by corporations than it was by African Americans to further their agenda. So it's, if you're just outraged that they're using co-opting human rights, then use that as your angle. But find your angle and what you're passionate about and use that to communicate to people. Another really important thing is to pay attention to all the other proposals and resolutions and pieces of legislation that are circulating right now, because most of them are not as thorough as the Move to Amend statement. So to really talk to people about that. We love Bernie Sanders for many reasons, but his thing that he's moving through Congress is really watered down. So to really educate yourself on why it's important to have the 2 prongs, that corporations are not people and money is not speech, and that we won't settle for anything less than that. information about that on Occupy Santa Rosa website soon, because Michael Allen in the California legislature is pushing something through that is not as thorough as the move to amend. So it is something that we really do have to move on and make our voices heard. So, and then locally, I should have someone from Occupy Petaluma. Amy, when are your meetings? Do you have regular meeting times that you want to announce?
It alternates. The best thing to do is go to www.occupypetaluma.com and go to the Occupy Democracy tab, and the meeting schedule is right there.
Okay, so there are meetings in Petaluma. Occupy Santa Rosa's corporations are not. People Working Group has meetings on Thursdays at 5 at the Peace and Justice Center. And evidently, I missed the meeting tonight, but we're making costumes, like doing some Occupy style actions. And bringing that kind of pizzazz to the Move to Amend coalition. And we also have been talking about having a party called Groove to Amend. So if you are an event organizer and you want to help with that, we really want to do that. And really bring people of all ages together and celebrate that we're coming together on this issue. There's a Move to Amend petition that you can sign on the website, but we also need people to circulate it because we're going to start lobbying the Sonoma County supervisors. We had an activist training last Saturday with David Cobb, who's a former Green Party presidential candidate and kind of the head lawyer trainer for Move to Amend. And out of that session, we realized that it's more practical in Sonoma County to try to get the supervisors to put a ballot resolution on the ballot, that we don't really have time to gather all the signatures, 180 days in advance of the November election. It's not really feasible. So we're going to start lobbying the Sonoma County supervisors. So we need 3 of them to get the ballot, to get it on the ballot in November. So one of the things that we want to be able to do is take the Move to Amend petition to them and say we have all these signatures from Sonoma County already, like people are really behind this. So if you want to help out getting signatures anywhere, anywhere you can, that would be great. That said, we forgot to bring the petition tonight. And then also we'd love to get more community group endorsements. So if you go to the Move to Amend website, there's a list of national endorsing organizations. A lot of those have local affiliates who don't even necessarily know that at the national level they've endorsed the Move to Amend amendment. So that's one way that we can get local groups involved, or if you have a group or a church that would be willing to endorse, that would be great. And host discussions and teach-ins at that venue. That would be wonderful. And then another idea we have is to actually have local Sonoma County corporations stand up and say, I'm a person, my business doesn't need to be. And then we'll use that as part of after we get the ballot, the resolution on the ballot, we can use that as part of our public education campaign. So if you are a small business owner or you know small businesses, you want to help do that networking, that's something that we want to get started on pretty soon. So those are just a few ideas.
Thank you, Oda. Very helpful. One thing I want to add is that it was not always the case that corporations had the kind of power in this country that they do have. When this country was first formed, corporations were chartered only by states, only for a specific purpose like building a road or a harbor, something that individuals didn't have the resource to do. And they were only chartered for a very specific time, usually no more than 3 to 5 years. But they've expanded their power and they need to be reined in. So I'm going to open this up for questions from the audience for either Sharon or Amy or Abraham.
Oh.
Yes. Can someone talk to the relation between corporations and their business and the banking system, the banks, and the concentration of wealth? That we don't, I think there's kind of yeah, someone talk to us.
Well, banks are corporations, of course, but they're the financial powerhouses. So, talking about the relationship of banks to other corporations?
Well, the question of concentration of wealth, there being so much wealth in so few hands,
Yes.
is beyond, I think, the move to amendment.
Yes, I think
But it's a question. It's occupies question.
right, and it feeds on itself because as concentrated forms of wealth, such as powerful corporations and powerful banks, are able to dominate the political process, they are able to shape the environment to suit themselves so that it continues to become more and more and more concentrated. That would be my answer.
Just to say that what we're proposing is something that happens in politics, okay? And that politics is only one part of the problem, obviously. So something like Move Your Money, for instance, or in general, trying not to deal with big corporations any way you can is something that you could do in your economic life, right? And then culturally, you could do something to create our own culture. Come to Love Choir on a Wednesday night and sing instead of, buying corporate-produced music or, whatever. I mean, there's things to do in many different areas. And I don't think anybody has one thing that's going to be a panacea. If we do this thing, it's all over. We're all going to do different things, which means I think we need to support each other in what we do and do the things that we're passionate about. So Move to Amend has, and the Move to Amend amendment doesn't do anything. I'd like that to be really clear. It doesn't do anything. What it does is allow us to do things. So that if you're talking to somebody, to one of your Republican friends, you can point out that this isn't about what decisions are made. It's about who gets to make the decisions. Okay? That's what we're talking about. Who gets to make the decisions? So we the people may make some decisions that we, the small people, don't necessarily agree with. But hey, that's the way it is in a democracy.
I have something to say. One example that I was thinking of is like the American Legislative Exchange Council, which is a coalition of corporations that shape legislation. So they will use their free speech rights to stop any wealth taxation legislation. So that's one example of how they come together.
To follow up on Neil's point about the interrelationship, people generally are waking up to the fact that the Federal Reserve System is neither federal nor reserve as in reserves, and the system is a private corporation, which is chartered not in any of the 50 states, but somewhere unknown in somewhere else in the world. Our constitutional expert can probably provide some of the details that if you scratch the United States of America, it turns out we, as a country, are a private corporation. So for the deeper you get, the weirder and darker, but nonetheless, we have each other.
Speaking to the mic.
I remember ages ago when I asked somebody, I was probably 18, what a corporation was. And they said, oh, well, it's a way for people to avoid being singled out and sued. And when you back it up that far and think about it, it avoids the very wealthy from being singled out and punished. And that's very, that goes back to a long, long time ago, but when you go back to the original definition,
That's true. And that brings up the whole concept of limited liability, which there are a lot of mom and pop stores and small businesses that really like the limited liability, and that raises issues. Plus, the whole issue of nonprofits, should they be included? I say yes. I think nonprofits should also not be persons. They can have privileges and benefits as well. And limited liability, again, that can be a privilege, that can be a benefit. It doesn't take anything away, it just leaves it in the hands of the people.
Here we go. Right here. Oh.
none of us have limited liabilities as people.
Yeah, that's true. I really second what you were saying about USAID. We are really no longer operating under a constitution. It has been subverted by the globalists and the corporations that are the 99.99%, which is what you were saying. Also, I think it's very important to know the insidious plan of the corporation that's happening here in California, across the United States, through the Agenda 21 program under the Wildlands Project map. And I would ask everyone, please Google the Wildlands Project map. They are in the process right now of taking down our food supply so that Monsanto can move in, control all the seed and all of the fertilizer, and that we will no longer have control over our food supply. Our water supply is being taken over right now too by large corporations, overseas corporations. So we are in big trouble, and unless we really mind restore here from the outside attacks of UN, we'll have bigger corporate problems. Thank you, I appreciate all your comments. Thank you very much. Wildlands Project now.
So we've got time for a couple more questions. Let's go for questions.
Okay. About 5 more minutes, Joseph, because we've got to wrap it up.
Okay, so I wanted to just address wealth inequality and how corporate personhood kind of affects that. And one way it affects that is through our trade laws. We have these free trade laws, which have been coming down the pipe for the last, 15 years since NAFTA, I would say, 20 years. And what that's doing is it's undermining our environmental protections, our workplace safety protections, our fair labor practices. We're competing against nations where workers make $300 a month, and we're being asked to give up those regulatory protections in order to compete, which is exactly the wrong thing which we need to do. And I know Move to Amend has a timeline. We want to get these signatures on the ballot and get these resolutions passed. But I say we go a little bit quicker and take it up a notch and just get it done now. Talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, internalize this debate, have this discussion, and let's move on and get it done.
Yeah, I want to address the issue of trade laws. It was in 1994 and 1995, respectively, that NAFTA went into effect and the World Trade Organization went into effect. Who promoted who pushed that through during a lame duck session of Congress as far as the WTO goes? It was the large corporations and the institutions that they formed together, because they compete with each other, but they cooperate together to create not just a national environment that works well for them, but a global environment that works well for them. The WTO is a constitution for corporate rights. We do have to be careful, though, to not become isolationist in the sense of cooperating globally. We have to do that. There is something called globalization from below. I heard the term in here tonight. We really need to be cooperating and not be afraid of working with other nations and with other people, especially in other nations, to create policies that work for the common good, both at home and around the world.
We've got time for one more comment.
Thanks. Well, that's kind of like a comment, actually. I think the move to amend is an important thing, but the corporations and rich people have always bought our elections from the very beginning. I mean, if you read the People's History of the United States, it was set up as a corporate giveaway to people who own the big plantations and the big companies and all that. And so we really have to think more deeply about changing the system completely, and capitalism is the basis for, of this economy and the basis of the problem.
So I know that there's a whole lot more that people want to say and probably want to hear, but we also made an agreement to get everybody out of here at 9:20. We're coming up on that. So I'm going to bring Shepard up to